Training camp is the kickoff of the season, and one thing is always clear. You have to have goals. Where are they going today on Locked On Chiefs?
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Locked On Chiefs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. We're brought to you by Gametime. Go download that app, create your account, and use the code Locked On NFL. You're going to get $20 off of your first ticket purchase. We're going to have a lot of fun today because Matt Derrick here is to talk sense into me as I kind of lose my mind just before we go to training camp from an undisclosed location on the West Coast. I'm Ryan Tracy, founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, as well as NFL33.com and RGR Football. This is Matt Derrick, the beat reporter in charge, I should say, at ChiefsDigest.com. We have a lot of fun, but check out ChiefsDigest.com now. Go get subscribed or bookmark that and then subscribe to his channel here on YouTube as well, where you can do for us, like, sub, and hit that bell. And make sure you get on Spotify and Apple Music as well for the audio side. You can even get us on the text line where breaking news will come out, especially if something goes crazy at the reporting deadlines at 816-357-8781. How did they get off to a fast start? That's coming up later in the show. Are they actually focused enough right now? It's been a crazy summer. We're going to get to that coming up next, but we got to start, Matt, at the basis that I'm sure the coaching staff is already set up for, and that is it's not enough just to say, hey, we want to go back to the Super Bowl. Yes, you do, but you have to have incremental steps there, and I think what we've heard in the past is that they've been a little quiet about their end goals most seasons. This year, it seems to be a free-for-all. Everybody wants that third ring, and that's good, but how does the coaching staff keep them focused to get there? What are the incremental goals that they have to accomplish?
Yeah, we've talked about it before, but, in 2020, it was run it back from the very beginning. I mean, that was the goal all along. And I think you saw that goal, take a toll on the team. I mean, there was a pressure to be perfect, and they go 14-2. It's a great season, but they didn't get the game that they wanted. It was the one at the end. And, and I think both Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, the leaders of this team, Chris Jones, they learned things from that experience about, what was the right thing to do, what was the wrong thing to do. And so you saw it last year, running back was not in their vocabulary. Winning a second Super Bowl wasn't in their vocabulary. It was more about winning the next Super Bowl. I mean, winning the Super Bowl in front of them. They weren't worried about the one behind them anymore. And, there wasn't, especially from the coaching staff and the players, it wasn't the drive to be perfect. It was the drive to try and get better. It was just the drive to make sure that by the end of the season, you're playing your best football. And they didn't take the path last year that they wanted to. But hey, if you told this team again, hey, you're going to go 12-5 and you're still going to win a Super Bowl, you're going to go 11-6 and win a Super Bowl, they'd take that. I mean, they're not concerned about trying to go 17-0 and set a crazy record or anything like this. You are hearing a bit different talk this time. You are hearing some of the players acknowledge and embracing three-peat. Yeah, it's what's there. That's the goal. That's what we're trying to do. You've got another group that is, absolutely, just trying to take it the game at a time. And I think that this time, Andy Reid might be taking a different course. Maybe it's letting the players individually kind of decide what their motivation is. But he's going to have an overarching goal. And, and every year, Andy Reid has a theme for the team. I mean, we saw last year it was United. A couple of years ago it was Edge. I'd be interested to see what the word is, for this year, what the motto is for this year's team, because that will at least set the tone from a coaching mindset and everything about what it is. I mean, let's face it. I mean, they have one goal. It's to win the Super Bowl. It's depending on, I think, who you are, whether your goal is to win your first, it's to win your second, you win your third, or win. Nobody's really talking about winning their fourth necessarily, but I mean, that's a possibility for some of these guys. So, I mean, I think they're going to let them kind of set their own goals as far as how they are part of this team. But, we're going to get a really good indication, next week when this team reports, just what is the way that Andy Reid's going to try to approach this to make sure that everybody's on the same page. Because the one thing I will take away and will say about this is that if there's anybody that comes into this camp that's not in the right mindset, the one thing that you've got is that you've got Patrick Mahomes that's going to get people in the right mindset, because that dude is the most competitive person that we will ever see. And there's no doubt he is still driven by that Super Bowl 55 loss. He never wants to have that feeling again. And so if he thinks that there's somebody that's going to cause him to feel like he's lost a Super Bowl, he's going to let him know about it at any point during the season.
If I had to pick a word, it would be focus this year in a number of different ways. We're going to talk about that coming up for the players here in a bit. But if you're going to break it out, offense versus defense, I would think, as you said, the balance is about point differential on any given game day. As long as you're on the plus side of that, you're getting the W, and that's what matters. But if you were going to break it down further, what would be the offensive goal or word other than getting back to where you were, like really rejuvenate, especially the deep game? Do you have something else that would be better?
Yeah, I'm trying to think about maybe what a good phrase or, what it is, because for some of these guys, remember, it's not about getting back to where they were because they're newcomers. They're not used to how things were when they had Tyreek Hill. They don't know what it was like without Tyreek Hill. I mean, so, I'm interested to see how they do kind of approach that, what kind of the theme is amongst them all, except that I think it might just be something along the lines of, go deep. I mean, it might just be, because what I think for the people who've been around now in the system for, a few seasons, they certainly want to be better than they were last year. So I would expect, that's probably going to be the talking point that you hear a lot, is just about being better, being more efficient, getting more done than they did last year, because the offense was very disappointed in its regular season performance. So, when you think of it in the terms of, hey, the Chiefs have added 2 first-round draft picks into their wide receiver core, that tells you a lot about, just and phrasing it as far as just how much, firepower that they've added in there. So, it'll be interesting, the kind of words. I think you're going to hear a lot about confidence. I think you're going to hear a lot about, the chemistry. I think you're going to hear a lot about just trying to get everybody together, because it is a fairly new group. So, and you've got some guys like Xavier Worthy we haven't even seen on the field yet. So there's going to still be a lot of incorporating in. There's going to be probably a little bit of, learning that goes along too. I don't think that they're expecting to come out of the blocks just absolutely on point. I don't think that, this might be a little bit of, past defensive years, where I don't think you'll hear Andy Reid put it this way, because he doesn't kind of, say things the same way that Steve Spagnuolo does. But I think you're going to see, Andy kind of be patient with the language of his offense, because he just wants them playing well in January and February. He's not necessarily real concerned about how it looks like in September.
And that makes sense. You got to get there to be there. And the way that you do that is paying attention to the details, being focused in on your job. We're going to talk about that coming up next here on the Locked On Podcast Network.
Summer's in full swing, and we're getting ready for football season. It doesn't matter whether you're trying to go to MLB right now and go see the Royals, or you're waiting on your preseason tickets, your Chiefs tickets for the regular season, or even those cold, snowy days. The best way to get it done is Game Time. It helps if you can plan. I fully admit that, but sometimes you just can't. And so last-minute deals are exactly what you're looking for, whether it's the section of the stadium that you want, whether it's the seat exactly that you want, or whether you're just looking for that last-minute super saver. You can save up to 60% on tickets last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, anything at Game Time. This is really important. I sit in one section of Arrowhead, and I really love it. It's a zone deal. And when that comes up, I try to go all in, because they give you all in pricing with no hidden fees. It takes the guesswork out of getting tickets for Arrowhead, but for baseball as well. You can get it all at Game Time. So download the Game Time app, create your account, and use our code LOCKEDONNFL. You're going to get $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply, but it's super simple. Create an account. Use our code LOCKEDONNFL, and you're going to get $20 off of your first ticket purchase. So download it today. It's last-minute tickets. It's lowest prices, and they are always guaranteed.
The other thing that's guaranteed is 24 coverage. If you are tired of ESPN and CBS and people shouting at you on TV and you just want to know about your team, check out the rest of everything, the top sports stories at Locked On Sports Today here on the YouTube platform. You can like and sub and get on Amazon Fire TV. Now, you can also get the information that you're looking for over at Chiefs Digest, as well as Chiefs Digest here on YouTube. Matt, I know that there is a lot that is about to happen in this season. We're all progressing, making our preparations, progressing towards that opening day. We will hear from you after quarterbacks are in camp next week. So until then, I only have one question, because this is a fun time of year for a lot of the players. A lot of players are out there toiling in secrecy, in silence. Some of the stars are all over the place. Travis Kelce's burgeoning solo act career as a backup to his girlfriend is certainly interesting, but Mahomes, a lot of people overseas at this point, still just 8, 9, 10 days before camp. Is there enough focus by these players right now to be ready to go when they have to report to St. Joe?
I mean, I have no concerns about that. I know Andy Reid doesn't have any concerns about that. And, part of it is that's what these guys have always done. In Kelce's case, I mean, is he more worldly traveled right now than he has been in the past? Sure. But has he been just as crazy as far as, doing the things that he wants to do? I mean, he's got the money, he's got the time, he's got the resources. So, if you think that between 2013 and 2023 that Travis Kelce was sitting at home during the summers for 3 months, just, sitting back and working out and eating healthy and, watching film, it's not how he spent his summers. I mean, dude spent his summers on beaches and, going to different places around the world. I mean, he may not have been on stage in Wembley, but in Amsterdam, but he was having a good time. And he's going to, apparently finish out, this summer the same way he has the last couple of years, going and playing in the golf tournament, celebrity golf tournament in Lake Tahoe. Mahomes has played there before too. I don't know, haven't seen him on the list this year, so he might not be playing. But, it's just that this is the first year that Travis has the paparazzi chasing him around. And, so you have an up-to-date schedule about where Travis Kelce is. Patrick Mahomes has done the exact same thing he's done every year the last few years for his off seasons. And both these guys, last year, Kelce obviously shot a lot more commercials. I'm sure he shot a lot more this year. Patrick has, I'm sure, done the usual workload. Chris Jones may even have a couple. Who knows? That's part of the process. I mean, it's more and more, but, it's not any different than what these guys have done before. So they know what the rule is. They know what the deal is. The only thing this year might be is that their timeline's shorter. They only had a month off, between the off-season workouts and when, they have to start being in the camp. So that's a little bit shorter time. But no, I have no concerns because, you've got three, handful of leaders, even beyond that, because you bring in other guys like even a Justin Reed into the conversation. You get other leaders on this team that they know what the responsibility is. They know what they've got to do and what's expected of them from the day that they step into the camp. And the great thing about that group of leaders is that they've also know how to whip the other guys into shape. So if there's anybody, a newcomer, a rookie, a second-year player, anybody who's coming into camp thinking that because this team's a Super Bowl champ and everything like this and that things are different, it can be a little bit more lax, they will whip them into shape in a heartbeat. So, no, I've got zero concerns about this team, being lack of focused.
So when it comes to the young guys, experience trumps everything, but at this point, how do you then get them to get jump started? It's almost like cheating. Nobody gets a free year in this offense, in this team, in this league, really. It's not the acclimation process that it used to be. Now, especially for this team, it's jump back in. We're going to need you. We're on a run back to a championship. You have to participate. Does that put more stress on the young guys? And how can the veterans, even though they are jet setting and everything else, how can they ease them into it or make that process better?
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, this is one of the toughest places to be if you're a young player, because, you are coming into a situation that is up and running. I mean, everybody knows their expectations. You're with a group that has some continuity. You've got a group that, knows what the score is. I mean, they know what the expectations are. There's a core. So if you're a rookie coming into this, you can't let up. Even if you're a second-year player, you can't let up, because if you're a rookie coming in, and I know Andy Reid delivers this message. I'm sure he probably says this almost word for word verbatim at the end of the mini camp and says, look, if you don't stay in your playbook, if you're not staying up to date about what you're doing, when you go up into training camp in a month, we're going to know in about 2 seconds, because we're going to be able to see it in you about whether or not you did your homework in the last month and whether you stayed in shape. And If you don't stay in your playbook and you don't stay in shape and you don't know what's expected of you when you get to training camp, then you're going to fall behind and you're not going to make this team. I mean, that's just the reality of it. And, and we've seen that in the past. I mean, you see it even with second-year players coming in about who worked the most in that offseason and who put in the most effort and how it shows off and everything. So, that's the thing, is that the coaches see it. And it does not take long before whether or not a player, took a month off. And whether, even if it's a veteran, it's going to be turned out very, very quickly. Tell you what, when they do that conditioning test, it becomes very apparent if anybody took a month off from exercising and staying in shape. They'll know that immediately. But, it only takes a few plays. It only takes a couple of meetings until, you can see whether or not the lights are on and whether things are clicking. And, if you didn't do your homework over the last month, you are going to be behind and you are never going to catch up.
I think I get tired just watching them do the conditioning test. So let's hope that everybody's paying attention and they're ready to go from step one. Step one is just camp. They have to get off to a fast start come the season as well. How do they do that? How do they ensure it? Coming up next here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure that you sub over at Locked On Sports today for your 24/7 every single moment of the day feed from all of us here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Matt, every day is preparation. Every day is working towards week one. Week one's going to be a challenge. They have a little bit of a gauntlet to start the season here on the road towards a three-peat. And I feel like, especially early in the season, we've seen the defense take a while to get rounded into shape. I do feel they're a little bit ahead of schedule on the defense this season after how successful they were last year, and significant, but I think lesser number of changes on the defensive side. On the offensive side, it's still about building chemistry, getting that timing down. It's got to be a little bit more, I think, not just on the quarterback, but everybody else coming back around him, a lot of new faces. So for me, if you are setting some of these criteria or these steps, if you're the coaching staff, how do you get them to be ready week one for a fast start that you can't drop too many ball games and still keep yourself relative towards that all-important first round bye?
Yeah, and I'm interested in this, and I'm going to try and find a way to phrase this to Andy Reid to see if we can't get a good answer out of it. But, last year, especially with the number of receivers that they had that were really competing for roster spots, it meant that you had to evaluate a lot of guys. It meant that a lot of guys were getting reps and looks. And, maybe it wasn't that you were giving as much, work to maybe the handful of 3 or 4 players who were going to be doing the bulk of the work once you get to week one. And even a guy like Kadarius Toney that had such a rough week on week one had no training camp. I wonder if, in retrospect, Andy Reid might handle that differently. Maybe Kadarius Toney doesn't play in week one. Maybe you go with the guys that, didn't have any rust that could just go in and have been getting all of the consistent work. But that to me is the other the thing for this year, because offensively, and that's the biggest focus, is that you've got new faces like Hollywood and Xavier Worthy that you need to get work done for. You need to be able to get Rashee Rice the football because, this is just the second year. He needs more experience. There are so many guys that need looks, but then we're also faced with the same conversation with there might be 8, 9, 10 guys who are competing for spots in the first team. And everybody needs reps with Mahomes to see what they've got, and needs reps with Carson Wentz. So, how do you juggle that? How do you make sure that you do both those servicing, that you get the guys who are going to play as many reps as they can to get on the same page with Mahomes, while also getting the guys who are competing for spots enough looks to figure out, who can do what? I think that's a challenge that the Chiefs didn't have in the past, when they had maybe 5 or 6 receivers that you knew were going to be there on opening day, and there wasn't a lot of competition. Now, they're still evaluating that kind of second tier of receivers. So I think there is a balance there that you have to achieve. And that's the big one, because, the rest of it, you're going to figure out pretty quickly who I think is your left tackle. You're hoping if Joe Tooney's in there, then your offensive line is going to be set. Your offense is going to be fine. All the pieces. Defensively, except for one position, really, who your starters are going to be. You're going to be figuring out your rotation at corner. but I also don't think there's any surprises about who's going to be in your top 5, top 6 corners. So it's not like you're in the same situation as you're a receiver at that spot. So, your starters in week 1 are going to be getting the most reps as the starters. So that I think helps. Now, can that help this team get off to a faster start than they did last year, so that maybe they're crisper in week 1? Because let's face it, I mean, as challenging as that start was last year, Chiefs were like one play away from it being a totally different result in week 1 and you feeling completely different about this team, I think. And that kind of thing, that just one play can make a huge difference. So, I look at, and you look at the schedule, Ryan, I mean, hey, this team could be 3-0 after 3 weeks. They could be 2-1, 1-2. They lose their first 2 games and then go to Atlanta. I mean, it's going to be a team that's really going to be doing some soul searching. So, I mean, hey, 0-3, there's a chance it could happen. I don't think it's going to, but there's a wide range of outcomes. It's a tough start to the season especially those first 2 weeks.
I think hitting the ground running is probably the most important thing. And for me, we'll talk about the run game and its importance this season, because I think that tone is going to be set right off the bat. And so for me, the first major thing in getting off to a fast start is that week 1 matchup and making sure that you are maybe less strictly on a game plan for accomplishing X. I think you have to be more malleable, because you don't know. Is the presence of Hollywood and Xavier going to give you, 4 deep cloud coverage? Are you going to have light boxes? Are you prepared to run against those? Or is it going to be a little bit more mix and match? You think somebody's going to dare to play man on you and you're going to get your over the top shots? I think it has to be a wider and more plentiful playbook the first week, the second week, maybe start narrowing down on that week 3 task against the Falcons. But until then, I feel like they have to prepare for everything.
Oh yeah, you absolutely do. I mean, at least you've got a couple of opponents in the first 2 weeks that you're playing that you're familiar with, but it doesn't mean that you're familiar with the 2024 version of them. And especially the Ravens. I mean, the Ravens you think are going to be absolutely changing things up and doing some things differently. You're going to see some new wrinkles from them. So yeah, I mean, you're at the advantage of at least that you're facing some familiar teams, or you're familiar with the personnel, you're familiar with the concepts. But that doesn't mean that you're ready for the new version of them, and especially how they're going to challenge you this year, especially at the Chiefs. You've got some new pieces yourselves and things that you can do differently. So, yeah, I mean, Andy Reid, I think, is absolutely going to be in the position to be able to experiment a little bit early in the season to figure out what some of their best concepts are going to be. The one thing, with Andy Reid that's probably different than we hear about the terminology from a Steve Spagnuolo is that Andy Reid's going to be pretty confident in what he's doing. He's not going to say, hey, it's going to take us 4 weeks to find out what we've got. Andy Reid's going to say, I know what we got. I know what we're capable of. It's up to these guys to execute. And that's kind of a consistent feeling that he's always had. So I think that he's going to be extremely confident in this group. I don't think you're going to hear anything differently, but yeah, I mean, does their advantage of there be able to be multiple early on, I think is going to be pretty key to getting off to a good start.
I think so as well. What are you guys looking for? How do they start fast? Leave your comments below here on YouTube and over in the reviews on Spotify and Apple Music. Matt, thank you for all the preparations as you get ready for training camp. We thank you for cluing us in here. We look forward to hearing from you once they arrive in camp, but stay cool, stay comfortable. It's a long camp, Matt. Thanks for being here today.
Absolutely, Ryan. Always great talking to you. Take care, everybody.
Folks, you guys have a great Wednesday. I hope that you enjoy it. More from us as we get closer, as well as our camp pre-camp predictions for that 53-man roster coming next week when I am back in studio. Adios from the West Coast. Hope you guys are doing well. Enjoy yourselves. We're going to talk to you next time as we get ready for training camp 2024 about to kick off. Like, sub, and hit the bell. Thank you for your time.